My 36-year-old female daughter's 13-year-old female birthday was last weekend. There is a trampoline park in town that offers sleepover parties where the kids can play for a few hours, watch a movie, and have a sleepover on the trampolines. Her school is very small, so there are only 20 students in her entire year. When we were booking the event, she told me to only book 19 places. I asked her if she was sure she wasn't missing out on someone, but she assured me there were only 19 kids in her class, and I was just misremembering. Fast forward to her birthday, and this girl, Camilla, shows up with an entire box full of gifts. Teddy bears, perfume, candles, nail polish, flowers, chocolates, etc. I remembered picking her up from school at the beginning of the school year and seeing her chatting and being very friendly with Camilla, so I assumed they were quite good friends. When Camilla went up to hug my daughter and wish her a happy birthday, she lightly pushed her away and told Camilla she couldn't attend as we forgot to book her place. I apologized to Camilla and her mother and offered to talk to the people in charge and pay for her place. But my daughter insisted that Camilla couldn't come. Camilla was very distraught over this and started sobbing. I pulled my daughter aside and asked her why Camilla couldn't join, even though they used to be friendly and she had invited every other student in her year. She said that Camilla was just really weird, obsessive, and creepy, and she didn't want to be friends with her anymore. I asked her if Camilla was bullying her, and she said no, she just didn't want to be around Camilla. Camilla's mother had found out about the party through another parent, and Camilla decided to surprise my daughter, knowing she hadn't been given an invite. I returned the gifts to Camilla, apologized again, and gently told her that there weren't enough spaces. Her mother started screaming at me, telling me that I was a grown adult woman bullying a preteen girl. I told her that it was my daughter's birthday party. She could invite whoever she wanted. She accused me of raising my daughter to be a bully and that she couldn't just invite the entire class and exclude one girl. She claimed that Camilla was my daughter's best friend and she had the right to be invited. I told her that my daughter is a teenager, not a 5-year-old. She can't be forced to invite the entire class just to be nice. I said that I didn't want to raise a doormat. I didn't want to teach her to value the feelings of others at the expense of her own. If my daughter feels uncomfortable around someone, then I prioritize her well-being over that of a stranger. Camilla's mother is now talking to the teachers to punish my daughter for bullying. I've tried explaining to her that my daughter was simply setting her boundaries. She shouldn't have to face consequences for that. Camilla's mother said that I was an evil blasciachi who took joy in bullying little girls. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. What your daughter did was mean. She invited the entire class with one exclusion. Your daughter is the bully. You're the a-hole for not shutting down the party right then and there for your daughter lying to you about how many kids were in her class. Yes, she can invite who she wants if she does it openly and honestly. She didn't. She lied to you, and no, your daughter wasn't setting boundaries. She was cruel to one kid. I suspect she made a big deal out of giving out the invites as well, given that Camilla knew exactly where and what time the party was at. Comment 2. You're the a-hole. Your daughter was being an a-hole, and instead of telling her to cut it out, say thank you for the gifts and be nice, you backed up her bad behavior. Your daughter lied to you. That's an issue. It's likely that one of the other kids invited Camilla because they wanted to see her get turned away. Nasty. And your daughter did exactly that. Poor Camilla. You're kidding yourself if you want to call this behavior boundary setting. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post and for all your support. It's been a week since my daughter's birthday party, and I wanted to give you an update on what's been happening. After the confrontation with Camilla's mother at the trampoline park, things took a turn for the worse. The next day, my daughter came home from school in tears. She told me that Camilla had been spreading rumors about her, telling everyone that she was a bully and that she had purposely excluded Camilla from the party. My daughter was devastated. She had always been a kind and inclusive person, and the idea of being labeled a bully was crushing her. I decided to reach out to Camilla's mother to try and smooth things over. I invited her to meet me for coffee so we could talk things out. At first, she was reluctant, but eventually she agreed. We met at a local cafe and I tried to explain my daughter's perspective. I told her that my daughter had felt uncomfortable around Camilla for a while now, and that she had the right to set boundaries in her friendships. Camilla's mother listened, but I could tell she was still upset. As we talked, I started to realize that there was more to the story than I had initially thought. Camilla's mother confided in me that Camilla had been struggling with some mental health issues, and that she had become fixated on my daughter as her only friend. She said that Camilla had been talking about my daughter nonstop and had even started to mimic her style and interests. It was clear that Camilla's obsession with my daughter had become unhealthy, and that my daughter's decision to distance herself was a necessary one. I felt a pang of sympathy for Camilla and her mother. It couldn't be easy to watch your child struggle with mental health issues, and I could understand why Camilla's mother had been so upset when my daughter excluded her from the party. At the same time, I knew that my daughter's well-being had to come first. I couldn't force her to be friends with someone who made her uncomfortable, no matter how much I felt for them. In the end, Camilla's mother and I agreed to try and find a way forward. We decided that we would work with the school to get Camilla the support she needed, and that we would encourage our daughters to be kind to one another, even if they couldn't be close friends. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. As for my daughter, she's been doing her best to move past the incident. She's been spending more time with her other friends, and she's even started a new hobby, painting. She says it helps her to express her feelings and to cope with the stress of the situation. I'm proud of her for finding a healthy outlet and for standing up for herself even when it was difficult. Looking back, I realized that there were signs of Camilla's obsession with my daughter that I had missed. I remember one time when we were at a school event and Camilla had shown up wearing the exact same outfit as my daughter. At the time, I had thought it was just a coincidence, but now I see that it was part of a larger pattern. I wish I had been more attentive and that I had talked to my daughter about her feelings sooner. In the end, this experience has taught me a lot about the importance of communication and boundaries in relationships. It's not always easy to stand up for ourselves or to set limits with others, but it's necessary for our own well-being. I'm grateful for the support of my family and friends and for the opportunity to learn and grow from this experience. Thanks again for reading and for all your kind words and advice. It means a lot to me to have such a supportive community to turn to in times like these. Am I the idiot for telling my parents to sell their fancy cars and downsize before I help them financially? Throw a way to keep this separate from my normal account. I, 38 years old, and my husband, 41 years old, have been stressing over my parents. My parents are in a tough situation as they took out of their pensions at 55 and have only about $100,000. $130,000 each left. Their house has some equity, but not as much as you would think, as they have withdrawn from their equity line of credit several times. My dad has a $100,000 truck and a vintage Porsche, and my mom has a 7-seater when they are the only ones now. My dad is very prideful and refuses to take anyone's advice, so it was a shock when they came to me and asked for money. He has had a lot of health issues and told me he is going to be taking Social Security now. He is 68 and quitting his job, which means they cannot afford their mortgage or car payments. They totally blindsided me. I had no idea how bad it was until now. Thinking back, I guess I should have known, as they buy so much unnecessary crap. But my parents always acted like they were rich. I told them point blank I wasn't funding them until I could see all their accounts and assets, and this caused a huge fight. But they eventually relented. I went through what they have, and they really don't need my help. They just need to downsize dramatically. My husband is a CPA, so he knows this stuff, and we went through and told them what they needed to do. They need to sell all the vehicles and get a reliable sedan. They need to sell their 3,400 square foot home and buy into a single home with a basement suite or an apartment. I think the apartment is better, as my dad struggles to mow the lawn and hire someone now anyway. But my mom insists she needs land for a garden. After that, their Social Security payments would be enough, and they would still have a small nest egg. This was met with them complaining that they would be living like prisoners. My parents were angry that if they got a small single-family home, they would need to rent out the basement. My dad insists the basement, which he has as a man cave, is necessary for life, and my mom refuses to downsize, as she has a whole room full of clothes at their current home that can't fit in a smaller house. I got mad and told them they need to humble themselves, since they are the ones asking for money. This resulted in them yelling how ungrateful I am over the phone until I hung up. I told them they have to do this because I'm not helping. They still have more assets than my husband and we have a son to save college funds for. My parents have been trying to guilt me by saying they gave me great Christmas presents and college fund, so I owe them. I feel like that was a tiny proportion of their spending, and it didn't put them in this position. But am I obligated to help support them when they can support themselves if they downsize? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the a-hole. Poor planning on their part is not an emergency on your part. They can afford their lifestyle if they downsize, but they are choosing not to downsize. Instead, they want you to subsidize their lives. Don't. If they're strapped for cash, they can sell stuff. Comment 2, not the a-hole. Someone who owns a $100,000 truck that isn't farm equipment shouldn't ask anyone for money. You are absolutely right that they need to sell their assets now that they need cash. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last post, and a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks. Thanks for taking the time to read this update. After the heated phone call with my parents, I didn't hear from them for a few days. I was worried about how they were doing, but at the same time, I knew I had to stand my ground. My husband and I had spent hours going through their finances and coming up with a plan that would allow them to live comfortably without our financial support. About a week after our initial conversation, my mom called me. She sounded tired and defeated. She told me that they had been discussing our suggestions and realized that we were right. They knew they needed to make some changes if they wanted to avoid financial ruin. My dad, however, was still struggling with the idea of giving up his man cave and his beloved vehicles. I listened patiently as my mom shared her concerns. She confessed that she had been enabling my dad's spending habits for years, afraid to confront him about the toll it was taking on their finances. She had always found comfort in her own shopping sprees, using retail therapy as a way to cope with the stress of their mounting debt. As we talked, I began to understand the root of their financial issues. My parents had never really learned to live within their means. They had always relied on credit and the belief that they would have plenty of money in retirement. Now, faced with the reality of their situation, they were struggling to let go of the lifestyle they had grown accustomed to. I reminded my mom that downsizing didn't mean they had to live like prisoners. It was an opportunity to simplify their lives and focus on what really mattered. I shared stories of friends who had made similar changes and found a newfound sense of freedom and happiness. Over the next few days, my parents started taking small steps towards change. They listed their expensive vehicles for sale and began looking at smaller homes and apartments in their area. It wasn't easy, but they were starting to see the benefits of a more minimalist lifestyle. However, just as things were starting to look up, my dad had a health scare. He was rushed to the hospital with chest pains and had to undergo a series of tests. Thankfully, it wasn't a heart attack, but the doctors warned him that he needed to make some serious lifestyle changes if he wanted to avoid future complications. This incident seemed to be a wake-up call for my dad. He realized that his health was more important than any material possessions. He agreed to sell his beloved Porsche and even started talking about downsizing his man cave. As I watched my parents navigate this difficult time, I couldn't help but reflect on my own life choices. My husband and I had always been careful with our money, prioritizing our son's future and our own financial stability. But seeing my parents struggle made me realize just how quickly things could change. In the end, my parents decided to sell their house and move into a smaller apartment. It wasn't easy, but they knew it was the right decision for their future. They even found a place with a small balcony where my mom could still enjoy her love of gardening. As for me, I had to make a decision about how much support I was willing to provide. I knew I couldn't fund their entire lifestyle, but I also didn't want to see them struggle. After much discussion with my husband, we agreed to help them with the move and to set up a small monthly allowance to help with groceries and other essentials. It wasn't the solution my parents had hoped for, but it was a compromise that worked for everyone. And as I watched them settle into their new home, I knew that they had made the right choice. They were finally taking control of their finances and their future, and I was proud of them for that. Thanks again for reading this update. It's been a challenging few weeks, but I'm hopeful that things will continue to improve from here. Am I the idiot for feeling overwhelmed? When my sister-in-law asked me to house her sister's family, while her parents stayed for a year using a throwaway account, my brother and his wife are expecting their first child this summer. My sister-in-law is from a different country, and her first trimester was not easy, and I know that she misses her family a lot. Her parents are planning to stay with them for a year when the baby's born, with a quick trip home in between so they don't overstay their visa. She was thrilled that they could do this. She recently asked if her sister and her sister's family, husband, and 2 children under the age of 6 could also come out with her parents and stay with me because they won't all fit at their house. But she wants them to stay for 6 months. I asked if maybe they could do 2, 3 weeks, or even a month. But she wasn't happy about that at all because she really wants her sister to be here to help too. Am I the idiot for thinking that this is unreasonable and feeling imposed upon? Her family would not be able to drive, and I live 30 minutes away from my brother, and I work, so I wouldn't be able to drive them to see her every day, and I don't think my brother will have time to pick them up every day. Technically, I have the space, but I like my quiet time, and having 4 people that I've never met stay with me for 6 months feels overwhelming. They don't speak English, so it would also be a little awkward in the beginning, I think. The plan is to homeschool the older child while they're here. The younger one isn't school age yet. I don't fully understand the husband's job, but apparently he's able to do it remotely. That would mean he's on calls and video meetings in the middle of the night, though. I understand that it's hard to have a baby so far from your family, and I want to be supportive of my sister-in-law. I've been firm in my stance that a 6-month visit is too long, but she's pretty upset with me, and her and my brother haven't been speaking to me for a couple of weeks now, so I'm wondering if I'm just being cruel or selfish here. Edit. Thank you so much, everyone, for your comments and for helping me to feel much better that I was not being unreasonable. I'm reading through all the comments but wanted to reply to a few ideas that many had shared. 1. My brother and sister-in-law cannot afford a short-term rental, nor can her family. But beyond that, in her culture, it would be considered rude to put them up somewhere else if family can accommodate them. I believe they briefly looked at Airbnbs and short-term rentals, but in addition to the expense, her family's lack of permanent status for that long of a stay might have been a concern for some, not sure of exact details or convos, and maybe they just told me that to make it seem like they had no other option. But the bottom line is they can't afford it. 2. Thank you to all who pointed out some of the potential legal issues with the husband working remotely here on a tourist visa and the sticky situations that could come out of being here for so long. I had not considered that, and I really appreciate the advice. 3. If she were to go back to her home country with the baby instead of everyone coming here, my brother could only stay for a few weeks. And ironically, her family doesn't have room for them to stay with them. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. How dangerous or hard to handle will the kid be? 6 adults to watch 1 baby? 1 baby does not need mom, dad, grandma, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew for months at a time. There's no conceivable way that that many untrained people are necessary. It actually would be far easier for her and her husband to move back 2 people instead of 6 people moving to your town. This is all nice, not required. How much sacrifice do you feel like doing that'll result in something kind of nice for sister-in-law that she could achieve on her own without all this fuss? Comment 2. Not the idiot. This is a huge imposition on you and your family for 6 months. A week? Sure. 2 weeks? Maybe. 6 months? Hell no. Airbnbs exist for a reason. You're not a hotel. If they can't fit in their home, they can visit after the parents are gone, a year later, or they can stay elsewhere or stay shorter. Also, do they not have jobs or can they work remotely for 6 months? Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my update. It's been a tense couple of weeks since I last posted about my sister-in-law wanting her family to stay with me for 6 months when the baby's born. So after my initial post, I decided to have a heart-to-heart with my brother. I explained my concerns about having 4 people I've never met stay with me for such a long time, especially considering the language barrier and the fact that I work full-time. He seemed to understand where I was coming from, but he also shared how much this means to his wife and how she's been struggling with being away from her family during her pregnancy. We brainstormed some possible compromises, like having her family stay for a shorter period or finding a way to split their time between our houses. But then my sister-in-law dropped a bombshell. Her parents had decided to extend their stay to a full year, which meant they could accommodate her sister's family at their place after all. I was relieved, but also a bit hurt that they hadn't told me sooner. Apparently, they'd been discussing this option for a while, but didn't want to get my hopes up in case it fell through. I wish they had been more transparent with me from the start. In the meantime, I've been trying to be more supportive of my sister-in-law in other ways. I've been checking in on her more often, offering to help with baby preparations, and even started learning some basic phrases in her native language. It's been a good reminder that even though we may have our differences, we're still family. But here's the thing. A few days ago, my sister-in-law's sister reached out to me directly. She apologized for the miscommunication and said she felt terrible about potentially putting me in an uncomfortable position. She explained that she's been going through a tough time in her marriage and was hoping that being here with her family would give her some much-needed support. I was touched by her honesty and vulnerability. It made me realize that there's often more going on beneath the surface than we realize. I told her that while I couldn't commit to hosting them for 6 months, I would be happy to have them stay with me for a few weeks when they first arrive, to help them get settled and spend some quality time together. Looking back, I can see how my own family history played a role in my initial reaction. Growing up, my family wasn't always the best at communicating or respecting boundaries. I think part of me was afraid of falling into old patterns and feeling taken advantage of. But this experience has shown me that it's possible to set healthy boundaries while still being there for the people we love. So that's where things stand now. My sister-in-law's family will be staying with her parents for the majority of their visit, but I'll be hosting them for a short stint when they first arrive. I'm actually looking forward to getting to know them better and being a part of this special time in my brother and sister-in-law's lives. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It means a lot to have this community to turn to when things get complicated. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.